Easy here, guys and gals. I'm laughing because I have been talking for close to 5 minutes and realized that I was not recording. Yeah, uh, sometimes the way it is. It's Sunday afternoon. I'm relaxing, getting ready. There's going to be a storm later on. Not yet. You know, like when the wind also comes, you know the rain is coming. Oops, water's itching. And yeah, I was talking about something earlier. Is that I was having a chat with my Spanish professor on Friday, and out in Spain, there's a couple things going on. One is that they will have a vote in the different provinces in Spain or states in Spain. I think it's called, yeah, they're called states. In the different states in Spain, where they'll be electing judges. Okay, so there's a whole thing about the judicial system, which is it's like the first time that they've gone through this way of electing judges, nominating judges. And there's also, I guess, a strike or protest going on from the teachers' unions. And so this, as we were saying, this is not a coincidence because the teachers' unions are going to be blocking certain places and are going to make it very complicated for the electoral process to take part in the electoral process in the usual way. And a little bit of a glare. And the other thing is that as we were chatting about the teachers, I was thinking it reminded me when I was in school and high school and later on in towards university, and whenever there was something that happened, I was saying government against teachers unions, the government always lost. It seems that the teachers unions are the most um, I was going to say they're the toughest unions very often. And I was saying that's kind of a paradox, isn't it? Because, in school, you're supposedly, it doesn't replace the family, although some people think it does. But, for values, for teaching thought processes and so on, aside from the usual sciences and so on. But it's actually, as you see at schools, and you think about it over years, schools has been, basically, I was almost going to say a cesspool for many, many movements that have not actually always benefited society, So, like I told him, I says, I don't know what they want, but they'll probably get it. And, well, the discussion went in a different way because in Mexico they have the first elected female president of the United States of Mexico. It's actually it's the way it is called when they say it in Spanish. But as we were saying, we're going to see, some people say, that she's controlled by the cartels. Others say that she's basically an iron lady, a bit like Margaret Thatcher. I like to listen to her because I listen to her speeches for practicing my Spanish. She has a PhD in physics, but she was the mayor of Mexico City before. So I mean, this is a person who's been in politics more or less all her life. But what I was telling my professor is that in a way, if you think about it, this is a real type of confrontation. One might say in politics, okay, there was the whole tariff thing and so on, but there was ways to make a deal, put it that way. But when you're against the trade unions, and in this case not the trade unions but the teachers union, usually, yeah, on paper it's a deal, but it's downright dirty as far as the discussions go. So anyway, we chatted about that. Went from one thing to another in the type of discussions, but it is something, isn't it? I mean, when you get to the point of discussing with people in different countries, you do see that one thing is interesting is that it's the art. I was almost going to say the art of the deal, but then I'll be told I'm being political. But in a way, it is. There's the art of discussing and the art of compromise in cultures that makes a big difference in how a country gets along. I get back to what I've said many times before: is over here in Switzerland, we cultivate the art of compromise, and that creates a very, I was almost going to say, a very slow society. Things don't change quickly here. It's not that they don't change; they just don't change quickly. We chew the cud a lot more over here, and I've often heard, especially with young people, it makes them really frustrated because things don't move here as fast as they would like. And I guess that for the elderly, when something does change, it creates immediately the reaction. It's always been like that. Why should it change? I guess that's a normal reaction for the elderly, but you hear it a lot over here. It's a long and tested way. Why should we do something else? Anyway, it's part of it. Anybody who's lived in Switzerland, aside from the fact that it seems to be more expensive than anywhere else in the world, you will find that it is a very traditional place, and nevertheless, we can be very avant-gardist. Well, that would maybe be another wrong, I guess. But there are a lot of things actually that people, as soon as you get into stereotypes, they get it wrong. Because usually the stereotype is what people want to know, what people want to see, or what people want to show. And then there's all the other stuff. And with the Swiss, actually, there's a lot of that. There's the non-traditional way, for example, of with certain music or with certain art forms and so on. And people will say, "Is that really Swiss?" I think that might come. It might come from a part of the society that is, trying to say that we are not what you expect. But anyway. Changing subjects in a way, though, with staying in Switzerland, probably you've seen about the mountain that fell down. It's a way of saying it, but we had an enormous mountain in a valley called the Lichtental, and basically the mountain more or less collapsed onto the glacier. So an extreme part of the mountain that collapsed onto the glacier and cracked the glacier, basically. The glacier was kind of like a tongue-like glacier, and it cracked. It broke off. It did. It broke off, and it all fell down into the valley onto, and I literally do mean onto, a village. So luckily the village had been evacuated. There was about 300 people in that village. But the village has been destroyed. It's been obliterated. And there was a river going along there. Well, basically due to the glacier. So right now the river has become a lake, which is being drained, luckily. But it's like, I think I read somewhere that if they brought in trailer trucks to remove the dirt and the silt and all that, oops, I'm going to sneeze. If they brought in trucks for that, it would take, excuse me, it would take, somebody said 1.5 million trucks to get rid of it. So, there's unbelievably large logistic issues. But anyway, look it up. It's the town is called Blatten, Bletten, and you will see it. There's things on YouTube. It's well worth looking into, and it's one of these natural disasters that is going to be going to be a big discussion for years over here in Switzerland how to get around that. Anyway, I'm up to 10 minutes. I guess I'll stop here. That'll be it. That'll be DC signing off. Hope you have a good Sunday and enjoy what's left of it for those of you who are in Europe, and enjoy the whole Sunday more or less for those of you who are in North America and other parts of the world. Okay. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.